total of 41 people, and I'm the only survivor.
No one survived, just one uncle and cousin.
60-some people from my family perished.
2 little twin brothers of my parents were sent to Auschwitz.
We lost the whole family.
A little brother and a little sister. With my parents, they didn't survive. A little brother and a little sister. With my parents, they didn't survive.
The name Holocaust is an ancient Greek word. Holocaust means destruction of human beings by fire.
In Europe, there were 9 million Jewish people at one time.
Destruction by fire.
There were 6 million Jewish people killed in the Holocaust.
6 million.
In the most horrifying ways.
6 million.
We were burned in the crematoriums.
Destruction by fire.
For no other reason than we were Jews.
6 million.
There were 5 million non-Jews who were killed.
The mentally, physically handicapped,
Jehovah's Witnesses.
gypsies, homosexuals.
Anybody that didn't want to go along with Hitler's policies.
Anybody.
Anybody. Anybody.
They didn't care.
I was born in Poland, in a town of 27,000.
I was born in Poland in 1931 in a little city called Bozentin.
I was born in Poland, very far away from here, many years ago.
We lived in Germany. I was born there.
I was born in Krakow, Poland.
I was born in Poland, in a small city.
We were brought up to respect everybody, regardless of their religion, regardless of their background, their race, color.
I had 2 sisters and 2 brothers. We were a very close family.
I came from a loving family. I had 3 older brothers.
We had lived in Germany for over 200 years. We were German citizens through and through.
I lived a wonderful life. My mother had a grocery store. My father was a plumber. I have 2 brothers, a sister, myself.
And we went to school, and we kept a quiet life.
But then when Hitler came to power, things changed.
And they changed very quickly.
It was only 6 weeks after Hitler came to power, on January the 30th of 1933. They already burned down our house and our warehouse. I was only 5 years old. My older siblings were already in their early 20s, and they are already being harassed. They were being told,
We don't want you here, you Jew. Go away, you Jew. Go to Palestine with the rest of the Jews.
It is unfortunate to say that the church had a lot to do with anti-Semitism, teaching, and also it was part of the curriculum, probably in school, that Jews are,
Christ killers.
they are,
Subhumans.
they.
Take advantage of the good Christians.
there were new laws, the Nuremberg laws. We were not allowed to drive anymore. We were not even allowed to have a telephone anymore. Jewish teachers were not allowed to teach in public schools. Jewish doctors were not allowed to teach and to practice on non-Jews, and vice versa. Our doctor was not a Jewish doctor, and he said,
I brought you into this world, and I don't care what anybody says. I will still treat you.
we were not allowed to sit on park benches because it was marked.
For Aryans only.
When I was in 3rd grade, there's a picture on the wall of Hitler. April the 20th of 1936. The teacher wanted to celebrate Hitler's birthday in his own way. So he walked up to me and he said,
Do you know what you just did? You stuck your tongue out at our Führer's picture. You insulted him.
and I told him, no, I didn't do it. So he called up 4 older boys from the back and he said,
Did you see that?
and they nodded their heads and said,
Yes.
and he said,
Are you going to let him insult our Führer? What are you going to do about it?
they started to spit in my face, kick me, punch me. They beat me up so badly. And then the teacher came out with this board in his hand, with thumbtacks sticking up. And he put that down on that chair, and he pushed me down on that board. I was on the floor crying. And when finally the teacher thought he had celebrated Hitler's birthday the way he wanted to, I got up from the floor and I went home. That was the last day for me in public school.
For Aryan only.
When the Nazis invaded Poland, the first agenda that they gave out to the Jewish people was to wear a yellow Star of David. We had to wear it on our chest, young and old, to be identified as Jews.
In Germany, it said Juda. In France, Juif. In Holland, Jude. Or in Belgium, it was just a J. Or in other countries, it was a plain star, and that was all. But everybody had to wear that badge.
Everybody had to wear that badge.
You could not go out, venture without the yellow star if you're Jewish. If they catch you without a yellow star, you're Jewish, they could do anything to you. They could beat you to death, shoot you, anything.
I remember 6 young men, about 15, 16 years old, defied the orders. They wouldn't put on the Star of David. They were driven, beaten into a big square where the gallows were ready for them. All the Jewish people, thousands of people, had to march into that square and to look upright as they were hanging one by one. No mercy. There were people who looked on and never said a word.
In 1940, they ordered all the Jews to live in a ghetto. My parents were deported before to another part of Poland, but they perished. So me and my 3 sisters were given a small room about 8 by 8. And in that room, you cooked, you lived, you slept. In the ghetto, the living conditions were just terrible, especially in the sanitaries.
When my father informed me that I would have to leave and live with a Polish Christian family and I had never even met them, I was literally heartbroken. But I knew that I had no choice. On the way, I met an older cousin of mine. He approached me, kissed my forehead and left without saying a word because both he and we understood that he knew what was happening. And we never saw each other again because he didn't survive the war.
We never knew which house, which street is gonna be next. They came and they beat out my oldest and my youngest brother from our house. I remember my youngest brother, who was only 2.5 years older than I was, stood up at that truck as they were taking them away, and he shouted as loud as he could.
Holly, don't worry. I will be back.
I was very close with this brother. We had so much in common. We went to the same school. He was one of the best students in the school, and he was so proud that his little sister was doing good. His name was Shimek. I never saw my brother again.
The malnutrition and starvation was terrible. There were people dying in the street. There were children who were 10 years old that looked like 3-year-old children and stretched out their hands, begging from people who they themselves didn't have nothing.
Eventually, of course, we arrived at the house of the people that were going to shelter me. And in the morning, when I got up, this Mrs. Surowieska came in, and she announced to me,
From here on, you're Helinka Bertasovna.
that's the name that I had to take on.
Mine is from Krakow.
1941, they told us all the Jews from Krakow must go over the bridge. So we went there, and my father worked for the Nazis because he was a general contractor. So he done this, and I helped him. So we got passed to go out of the ghetto. Any person who worked for the Nazi got passed to go out of the ghetto.
And if you were caught smuggling in the ghetto, you were hanged publicly, but the whole ghetto had to gather up and witness. Parents had to witness how their sons were being hanged, and sons, children, had to witness their father being hanged.
Witness.
We were told that no one is supposed to cry. A few of the people couldn't contain themselves. They were shot, and as a punishment later, they rounded up about 100 people because we didn't carry out the orders of the Gestapo, because we cried while the hangings were done. They whipped them, had to dig their own grave. Young people between the ages of 16 and 25.
Witness.
A few of the mothers couldn't contain themselves. Again, They were told not to cry. They were shot and thrown in with their loved ones.
One time, I inadvertently crossed myself with my left hand instead of using my right hand. Well, Mr. Sorowiecki immediately realized that I wasn't Halinka Bartusovna, but that his wife was sheltering a Jewish child. He told me that he knew who I was, but announced to me,
Since you are here, I will treat you just the same as before.
After they took those young men away, when they came back to our house, I was with my parents. We hear the shouts and the screams.
Judith, raus! All Jews out!
As soon as we went on the street, we were being already molested. One day, I was in the street. A little boy walked up to me with some cottage cheese in his hand, and he rubbed it all over my face. And everybody that was standing around thought that was so cute what that little boy did to the Jew. I was 12 years old at the time. I'll never forget.
They are marching us into a big school. Actually, it was the school that I attended. They are pushing us in, filled to capacity, to each classroom, with crying mothers and fathers and children. We had no chairs. We were huddling next to one another on the floor and praying to God to help us.
What is happening to us? Why are they doing it to us?
In December of 1941, we received a notice.
Take inventory of everything that you have. Make sure that you are not missing any items.
Because you're going to be resettled.
Take all of your valuables by December the 5th and take it to the bank.
And they will keep it for you for safekeeping.
That morning of December 8th, we handed in our piece of paper with everything we had, with that inventory, and they said,
You'll get it wherever you're going.
we never ever saw anything again. Never. We were taken to the train station, and 2 hours later, we arrived at the capital city of our province, of our state. And people were coming from all over, but people did not greet each other the way they normally do.
How are you?
So wonderful to see you.
Not this time. Everybody had the same answer.
What are they gonna do with us?
Where are they going to send us? Are they going to send us to Poland?
Nobody knew what they were going to do with us. There were over 1,000 people that had come, and they took us to the train depot, loaded us like animals into freight cars, into boxcars. We were standing so tight. There were no beds in there. There were no benches in there. The only thing in there were 4 cans, one in each corner, where we had to relieve ourselves. People were screaming.
You just stepped on me!
Somebody opened the door a little while into this commotion. A man in a Gestapo uniform. My mother runs up to him and she begs him.
Hans, please, take out my little girl.
I'm 13 years old. The man shakes his head and tells her he didn't know her. The man in the Gestapo uniform was no other but a neighbor of ours. They lived 3 houses down the street. I played with his children. We went to school together. We did our homework together. We ate at each other's homes. What happened to my neighbors? They were really fine neighbors before the war. He slammed the door in her face. I cried and I begged my mother not to make any scenes. I don't want to be taken out. I want to be with them, whatever happens. But it was not to be. A little while again into this commotion, somebody again opened the door. It was dark. There was no light in that classroom. And literally, actually, reached for my arm and pulled me out and threw me across the hall into a different classroom with crying, screaming children without their parents. We were orphans already. We never saw our parents again. But because I was brought up in a home with love and understanding, I always give my neighbor the benefit of the doubt. Perhaps it was really he who saved my life.
One day there was an order from the city hall that all young kids should come to the square. And there were so many SS. And my mother came. I saw her from far away. She held a bag, something in her hand to give to us. Maybe some bread, maybe some money. But the Germans beat them. All around us, SS with German dogs. And if you try to run away, they let the dogs on you. To this day, when I see a German shepherd, I cannot take it. They let the dogs on you and they ripped you apart.
The doors opened. Soldiers were standing outside with guns on their backs, helmets, heavy coats. They were screaming and yelling and pushing us out with the butt of the gun.
Get out! Get out fast!
We had to line up in rows of 5 deep, and it was snowing. It was so bitter, bitter cold. It was way below zero. And then we marched for 5 miles until we arrived at the ghetto. It was barbed wire. It was completely surrounded to make sure we cannot get out and escape.
I saw my sister-in-law with the 2 children, and they were pulling all the children away from their mothers and actually throwing them on the trucks and taking them away. But they were young mothers. The screams of the children, they didn't want to let go. So they went with their children. And some of them were pushed away by the Gestapo, beaten away. And some of them succeeded to run with them, and some of them did not. They killed them as they were running to help their children.
Witness.
Mrs. Srovieska notified my father how dangerous the situation had become. Well, my father was able to bribe some officials and get their cooperation, and that made it possible to have me smuggled into that labor camp. And of course, I was illegal in that labor camp.
We were so exhausted. They assigned us a room in one of the old dilapidated houses. But when we got up there on the 2nd floor, we couldn't believe our eyes because it was infested with all kinds of insects, with cockroaches, with fleas, with bed bugs. Rats and mice were running around. There were people that had been sleeping there before us, Latvian Jewish people. But before we arrived, they were taken away to a forest nearby and killed in cold blood. In 2 days alone, they killed 30,000 people. Men, women, children, babies. They didn't care.
Who were these people?
How can anybody do that?
How can anybody do that to another human being?
It's still beyond me.
What makes people hate?
I was sent with 500 girls to the Lodge ghetto. I was actually lucky. I was taken into a young couple. The wife had a sister. Her name was Ruta. She was the most beautiful girl you want to see, not only outside, but inside. Her sister told her, if they come for us, if she should be with me, she should protect me and tell them she is my sister.
When we came to the first camp, Skarzisko in Poland, there were maybe 1,800 young boys and girls. They divided us into 3 camps. We lived in wooden barracks where there were bunk beds, 3 layers. There was nothing, no quilts, no covers, nothing. We worked every day from 7 to 7, except for the weekend. We have to work 18 hours when the shift changed.
I worked in a shoe factory, in a clothes factory, in a straw factory, a plastic factory. They gave out a ration once a week. Most people ate it up in one day. We were scavenging for peels from potatoes, grounds from coffee. We chopped it up and we called them potato pancakes. They were hard and bitter, but it was something to keep us till next week, when we get the new ration. When I was 14 and a half years old, I was walking around with a cane. I could not straighten up from malnutrition.
I worked in a mill. We used to steal potatoes. I used to steal many times a paper sack. I took off my clothes and slept at night in the paper sack. And my sister took the clothes and washed it. We didn't have soap, nothing.
Nothing.
And when they caught you stealing anything, even one potato, they took us to the station. They have a special stick made for us to beat us. A wooden stick with a narrow strip of leather. They give you 25 lashes. Many died. I got once 25 lashes and my back swelled up. I couldn't go to work. And by the Germans, if you don't work, you have no right to live. You have no right to live. If those forests, those trees and bushes could speak, how many people died there? And we were all young and for nothing. We didn't do nothing wrong.
Nothing.
And so many died. So many died.
For nothing.
I was like a push-button robot. They told me I'm supposed to do it, I wouldn't do it, I would be eliminated.
At least in the ghetto, you had someone to lean on, to cry on the shoulder, making it easier for us to get by. In 1942, when the Germans suffered their first exit on our Russian front, they decided to exterminate every Jew from the face of the earth. The ghettos were liquidated and concentration camps were erected, 4 of them.
Auschwitz, Belzec, Sobibor, Treblinka.
In 1943, I was taken to a concentration camp in Riga, and a different life started for me. That morning, when I left, my father came to me before he left for work. I could see his face. He could not sleep. His face was red. Tears were coming down his face. And he came over to me, and he hugged me, and he kissed me. It was the worst day of my life. I had never ever seen my father cry before, but he did. He could not control himself, because we both knew that would be the last time we would ever see each other. My mother cried as well. And when I said goodbye, that was the very last time I ever said goodbye to my parents and my 2 little twin brothers, because a few months later in November, they liquidated the ghetto.
Auschwitz, Belzec, Sobibor, Treblinka.
1943 in March, there was a Judenheim. They want to clean the ghetto, wipe the ghetto out. So when they surrendered that ghetto, people who worked for the Nazis, they went out. People who didn't work, they went to Auschwitz.
I was in 6 camps, and after 2 months, you wouldn't recognize any of us, because we didn't have even a comb to comb the hair. Nothing.
When they came for us, Ruta indeed was with me. We heard the shouts and the screams to get out. Some people grabbed little belongings. I had nothing on me. However, I did have something very precious from that march to the school with my parents. It was a tiny little picture of my mother. When we were marching, my mother stuck this little picture in my pocket and wanted me to remember her. It never left me until Auschwitz. I cried myself to sleep every night, looking at my mother's face, which I would give my life to see it again.
Auschwitz, Belzec, Sobibor, Treblinka.
So the Germans came in, and I helped send the children on the trucks. And later we found out that the children went to Auschwitz because the trucks came back empty. And I saw a doll inside the truck, a rag doll. And I saw that something was wrong because a child would not leave the doll. So maybe about 2-3 weeks later, we found out that they went to Auschwitz. They got burned completely.
For nothing.
Our ghetto was liquidated in 3 transports. Each one contained over 3,000 people. I, with my sisters, were put in those cars, jammed in like sardines, when we finally arrived at the place called Auschwitz.
And then a soldier came in.
Okay, if I give you a job, you do it. You don't do it, I kill you, right on the spot.
We went into a big hall, a kindergarten. Children by the 100, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. And the nurse came out and saluted to the German. He took a gun and shoot her right in the head. And she fell out. And I saw, like a fountain of blood running from her head, shooting out.
We hear the shouts and the screams. They are marching us down to the kettle cars. They are pushing us into each compartment, mothers and fathers and children. In your wildest dreams, you cannot imagine what went on in each kettle car. There was no water, there was no toilet, there was nowhere to have a little piece of bread. We were huddling next to one another and praying to God.
Auschwitz.
Then those trains arrived in Auschwitz, and they came in, day out. And when the doors opened, there was someone there who made it his business to meet every single train. And he went from car to car, and he used to yell out,
Give me the twins. I want the twins. I love twins. I will take good care of them.
he was called the Butcher of Auschwitz, or the Angel of Death. Dr. Joseph Mengele, who killed over 300 twins. He gouged out the eyes. He cut off their ears. He cut off their breasts, the genitals, organs, and so on. I only hope that my two little twin brothers went right with my parents into the gas chambers and did not have to suffer Mengele's experiments.
Auschwitz. Filthy barracks all over, electric wires, guards running back and forth, women by the hundreds in striped little prison dresses. Some of them had wooden shoes, most of them were barefoot, they had shaven heads, they looked like people from outer space. They come running towards the new arrivals and they scream out in old languages.
Dad, where are you coming from?
It should help you.
What are you doing here?
We were told that young people between the ages of 16 and 25 should go to the right. The other people should go to the left. My sisters I saw for the very last time. They were taken into the women's camp. I myself was taken in with the men. There, the sign, Arbeit macht frei.
Work will free you.
Yeah, that was a real distortion of fact.
For some unexplained reason, there was no selection when our group, the whole camp of Starosovice, came in. Had there been one, since I was so young, I would have gone straight to the gas chambers. My mother, who was then in the early 40s, would have been considered too old. Since there was no selection, the women were shaved, we were all tattooed, our clothes was taken away, and the whole group was sent to the barracks.
In front of my compartment stood a white, uniformed gentleman, Dr. Mengele, the butcher of Auschwitz. There were barking dogs, so many guards screaming and beating the people. All he said to us was for the men to get out first, the men and the boys. They took them away and we never saw them again. To the girls, to the women, he screamed and shouted with the other guards to get out. All the man said to us, all the man did, was raise his arm, pointed with the thumb, and screamed out in German,
Right, left,
Recht, links.
links.
Recht, links.
I went with Ruta to the right. Of course, we do not know which is the good way or the bad way.
We had to go where they told us.
Though my sisters didn't tell my mother that my father and brother did not survive, I think she sensed it. I could almost swear that she knew it without asking, and I don't think that she wanted to go on. My older brother, however, did survive. He came to Auschwitz. From there, he was sent to another camp and didn't survive that.
We are told we are going to have showers. They are marching us down to the bathhouses. The first thing I noticed was piles of human hair, piles of shoes, piles of clothes, and piles of gold, wedding bands, earrings, watches, bracelets. When a person had gold partials in their mouth, they were pulled out with pliers and thrown on the gold piles. They are ordering us to strip completely. They proceed, the men, guards, are proceeding to shave us everywhere.
Next, we were told to get in a room and to hold our nose and ears and eyes and to dunk into barrels of lighting. Next, we were given showers, hot, burning showers, then cold showers. Then we were hosed down with fire hoses to get rid of our lice. Then we were taken in the room and given those numbers. For the next 2.5 years was never mentioned my name. I became a statistic, a number.
Nothing.
That number today, if you wake me up, I could recite it right away in German, in the middle of the night. That's how brainwashed I was.
K3698.
We are being disinfected with smelly solution and big brushes everywhere. I am holding this little picture of my mother, that's all I had, in my fist, and I wouldn't let it go. The guards are accusing me that I did not put down the gold or diamonds. I opened my fist and I showed them, look, it is just a little picture of my mother. Please let me through. It will hurt nobody. And I closed my fist and I would not open it. They start to beat me all over my face and body, to open my fist and let it go. Let that picture go. But I wouldn't. But of course, they were stronger and they succeeded. The picture fell with the face up. I still dream about this after 60 years. The picture fell with the face up. My mother said to me then,
Paula, walk away. You're gonna be okay. Stop crying.
my mother was not there to say that. But at that instant when I looked down, that's what I heard my mother say to me, and I stopped crying.
And those who died among us by working, malnutrition, they always disappeared. And we know that we always smelled that horrible smell, a sweet smell of human flesh. Auschwitz was famous for that. You always saw those chimneys belching out that smoke, white smoke, never black smoke.
Auschwitz.
We had showers, but there were people who were not as lucky as I was, who went to the left. Instead, showers to open the gas opened, and we hear the cries, but we could not help them, and the voices died down. We had to take the warm bodies and put them on big wheelbarrows and wheel them into the crematoriums. After this ordeal, after one received a pair of wooden shoes and a little striped prison dress, no underwear or socks, we were sent into big, filthy barracks. It was freezing. What is next waiting for us?
He said to us,
You take 2 children down.
but they are smelly, dirty, crying. So I took one baby and he said,
Bring the baby outside by the sidewalk of the building and pile it. Bum, bum, bum.
but when we put the babies by the sidewalk, this German took a Luger gun and shot each child in the head, one by one. He was waiting for us to bring the babies, and he said,
Schnell. Faster, faster, faster.
so we said, should we kill the guy? We are 3 of us. So I figured, okay now, we can kill the guy. We can take him down. They kill us. So we established we can do nothing, because even if we killed the German, the baby would be killed.
The Gestapo tried pleasures to see naked girls. Every few hours they would come into the barracks and tell us to get undressed, and to get out they need to count us. On each counting they took out the most beautiful girls. Ruta was beautiful. They pulled her away. We were holding hands and swaying back and forth, and I can still hear the cries. She called out,
Paula, don't leave me.
and I was calling, Ruta, don't leave me. They were pulling on her, and of course they were stronger, and they pulled her away. I never saw her again.
Never again.
I contracted TB. Once I was in the hospital, I don't know whether they were trying to experiment on me or to see whether they could really cure me, but I was constantly receiving shots. And later on, the way these shots were given, I developed an infection. And I was extremely sick. But somehow my mind worked, and one day I realized that they had put me in the section where the next morning a truck comes and all those people are taken to the gas chambers. Well, somehow, miraculously, as morning came and I heard those trucks, I was suddenly a lot better. I stood up on the bed and I started to scream that I want a drink. There must have been some nice nurses, and they just put me back in the original bed. So I knew that now, at least, I won't go to the crematoria.
So we bring the babies. He came and he shot the babies in my hand. I dropped the babies on the floor from the echoes from the explosion, the things, and my ears almost cracked. And I opened my eyes to God. God, how in the world can you allow this? This is your children. All the children are created by God. God, how can you do it? And I lost already. I lost everything. We're supposed to load the children on the horse and buggy platform. So we took them one by one, and he said,
No, smite it.
that means.
Throw it. Catch them by the leg and throw on the buggy then.
So I went to the German and said, listen, the baby's still alive.
She's alive. She's dead.
He killed her. So we filled up the buggy, and when the buggy went to the cemetery, to the concentration camp, the blood was still running from the platform there. You could see like a line of blood.
You were counted in the barrack, you were counted outside the barrack, you were counted when you went to work. Every night, everybody had to be accounted for. Even the dead were laid out by the different barracks and counted. And if 1 in 10,000 was missing, or tried to escape, or maybe they couldn't find him, so sometimes he was dead, everybody had to stand in the heat or the bitter cold till he was found.
I had to squat for 22 hours because somebody had escaped, and of course, we thought that was the end as well. And this was already in late November, so for 22 hours is quite a long time.
People were dying, actually. It was terrible.
So this was my education, this was my college, this was my everything. But I figured, how can that be allowed? What's going on? We know in our synagogue, in our school, there's a God. There is no God. What's going on? How can that happen? How can that happen? The children are not involved in it. And the killers who are killing these children, they have children. They have parents, they have grandparents, the whole family. How can they do it?
After 2 or 3 weeks, my mother and I realized that Dr. Mengele comes into the barracks and carries out selections there. He came into some neighboring barracks and to our barracks, and several hundred women, and that included my mother and me, were put on trucks and sent to the crematoria. There, we had to wait in a windowless, dark room where Germans consistently came in to tease us by throwing some white flour or white powder and saying,
Do you want to be gassed here, or do you want to be taken to the crematoria?
and most of the women would answer, we
want to be gassed right here.
But of course, after an hour, we realized that we were alive, so obviously they had just been teasing us.
Every week, or sometimes every 2 weeks, selections took place. And you had to undress yourself, and a German would stand, and you would walk by, and he would assess you like a horse, or like a dog you see in a dog show. You still have something on, some flesh and skin or whatever. You went to the right. That means an extension of life. To the left, you were a reject, and those people went to the gas chamber. I somehow went through so many selections. I don't know how many. And it looks like I was lucky enough to go through because I'm here. I'm still here.
Here.
Well, fortunately, the Russian army was very close at the time from occupying Auschwitz. The Germans got orders to begin taking the crematoria apart. I believe that there were 6 in Auschwitz. And they simply had no time to do away with us. The whole group was sent back to the barracks. This is, to my knowledge, the only time that a group of people was sent to the crematoria and survived.
Still here.
I was a minute late because in Auschwitz, diarrhea was one of the most killing sickness. And I was sick and I had to go and I was a minute late. The leader of the barrack, he was looking for somebody. He was in a bad mood. And he noticed me running in.
Come here.
He started to beat me so hard. With his boots, he kicked me, broke my nose. He kicked me so hard in the belly that I lost control. Then he picked me up, he threw me in the air, and then he'd take like a nightstick, and I got about 10 on my neck. Then there was this bench, which weighed about 25 pounds, and I had to stand there, bend the knees on my toes, and hold that bench like this for I don't know for how long. And if you lost control, you put out your feet or toe, he would take every time and punch me in the head. I was completely, my face doubled the size. And then he would turn around and pretend he's leaving, and I would relax. Then he'd turn around and see me standing with another excuse to kick me. At that time, I decided to finish. I went out to the barbed wire, and he caught me, he chased me back, and gave me another few kicks. He just came up the stairs and says,
Where you go?
I told him I'm going to finish. He gave me a smack. He hit me again. He says,
Go back to your bunk.
at that time, I decided to live. You know, there is a quotation from the Psalms. King David says, "I shall not die, I shall live to tell the glory of God." I said to myself at that time, I shall not die, I shall live to take some type of revenge for my innocent victims, my own sufferings. These eyes have shed so many tears. That heart has taken in so much pain. There's no more tears left. There is a heart of stone.
I was already with my sisters. We were reunited in the second camp in Poland. And we saw Germans running from the Russian front, bleeding. And I said, oh my God, we're gonna be free. But they took us on those cattle trains, maybe a few hundred. There wasn't even a place to sit down. We were on those cattle trains for a week or more, without food, without water.
After Auschwitz, I was in Ravensbrück. I don't talk about it because it was so horrifying.
I went to Germany. It was concentration camp. I worked there. One day, a father and son were separated. And the son ran away from the camp because he found out his father was in my camp, Zentrallager 5. So he came to the guard and asked,
Listen, my father is there. I like to join my father.
So they asked him.
Are you a Jew?
Yeah.
So they took him, arrested him, and on Sunday they want to hang the son. He was about 17, 18. So they called the father, and we were all outside, the SS with machine gun, maybe about 500. So they said to the father,
Listen, lift your son's body.
he said,
No, I wouldn't do it.
so they beat him, they kicked him. And the son said in Hebrew,
Tata, hengma, nemoracha.
that means, Daddy, hang me, but take revenge, take revenge.
I'm dead already. You cannot help me. Hang me, Daddy. You cannot help yourself. Do it. Do it.
So the father went in and lifted his son's kicking bloody feet, and he was shaking like terrible. And later the father went into the fence, catch the electricity, he got electrocuted.
In 1945, they decided to liquidate, clean up all the terrible things they did in Auschwitz. January the 18th started the death marches. We were marching in those wooden shoes, and the snow would accumulate and you would fall down. And the minute you stopped for a minute or you fell down, right away they shoot you.
If you're behind a gun, and if you're being chased, you keep going. The reason it was called a death march, because people died on the way, and we were already so weak.
My mother by that time was sick already. So my middle sister and I, we kind of held her under her arms, and we always tried to be in the middle of the group so that they shouldn't notice that she really can't walk very well. But we also had problems with my older sister, who is alive today. She had given up. She said,
I have to sit on this rock.
she sat down and she said,
Let them shoot me. I don't want to walk anymore.
but of course my middle sister and I would not allow it. We forced her to walk and she walked. We must have walked about 2 days.
They are closing all the camps now. The guards are marching us out from different directions. We see hundreds, perhaps thousands, walking from different directions. People cannot endure anymore. For days and nights we are walking without water or food. And this small group walks into the last camp. The name of the camp is Bergen-Belsen.
When we came into Bergen-Belsen, we thought for sure they're gonna get rid of us because there are nothing to eat. And they shaved off the hair from all the girls. And they put us in a room where there was a shower. We didn't know, we thought it was a gas chamber. And they give us other clothes. And they took away those clothes and gave us other clothes from people who they killed before. I remember it was winter, January. It was freezing weather. They put us in a barrack. There was nothing in those barracks, nothing. A floor. We lay there. Maybe 300, a big barrack. We didn't eat nothing in Bergen-Belsen. We stayed there the whole month, January 1945. We didn't eat. We ate snow. Snow. That's all.
Ravensbrück,
We finally arrived at the place called Buchenwald, and I had to unload the train, the dead ones. I believe that more than a third were dead. The camp, the conditions were unbearable. There were about 70, 80,000. You couldn't pray there. Once you find a place, a space, you have to stick to it. Otherwise, you would pick yourself up and go for your needs, and you wouldn't find it. And then you had to walk around and fight till somebody else died. And you notice he is dying, just kick him out and take his place.
When I walked in with my group to Bergen-Belsen, I could not believe my eyes. Scattered hundreds of decayed bodies all over Bergen-Belsen. Smelly human waste, ditches all over Bergen-Belsen. Filthy barracks guards, German guards, women, vicious women were running and beating those skeletons. They cannot walk anymore.
I looked those bodies and I ran home and I cried and cried. I was sick. They didn't give you nothing. Typhus flourished. Everybody caught typhus. And I was sure I'm gonna die.
If you would put your hand under your arm, you would take out a handful of lice. In fact, at night, we slept on the floor, but there literally wasn't even place to stretch out. We almost sat on the hard floor. That's how we slept.
All of a sudden, they are picking 40 girls from the people who just walked in. I am among the 40 girls to be picked. They are sending us into a kitchen to peel potatoes. We are starving. We haven't eaten for days and nights. We stuff our mouths with the peels, with the raw potatoes. We swallow it as fast as we can. But as soon as the guards see us do this, they take all 40 girls out from the kitchen, and we have to raise our little striped prison dress and bend over. We receive 40 leather straps on our bare behinds without any mercy. I can still see in my dreams the blood gushing out from our behinds, our backs, without any mercy.
Bergen-Belsen, it was hell. 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 What we saw in Bergen-Belsen, no human. You cannot even imagine. You cannot imagine.
If I wanted to go outside there was like a big hole where this was an excuse for a bathroom, a toilet. So if I had to go out, there was no choice but literally to walk on dead bodies.
Hell.
I almost couldn't walk anymore. I still sort of wobbled, but I knew if this doesn't end, I won't survive.
Hell.
We came to a small camp, Flossenburg. That was a mean little camp. We came in the night and we were in some barracks. I lay down on a bunk which could keep about 10, 15 people. The warden said,
"Oh, more than half of them are dead."
and I was sleeping among them.
Hell on earth.
Time didn't matter anymore. We didn't know what time it is, we didn't know what day it is, what month it is. All we know is night and day, because our mind didn't function anymore. When you're full of lice, you're always hungry. Time, date don't mean nothing to you. I was assigned to a crew of 10, which pulled around the wagon and picked up the dead bodies in the camp. And believe me, we never were short of merchandise.
And we knew sooner or later we're gonna die. How can you live under those conditions? Many give up. If I wouldn't be with my sister, my youngest sister, Helen, I wouldn't survive. I give up.
Most of the time, my mother and sisters, we really tried for one another. I don't think that had I been there alone, I would have survived.
My foreman had a granddaughter my age, and her name was Paula. He always stopped by and talked to me. He brought me every day a little piece of bread. He brought me some rags to put on my feet. He did not see in front of him a little Jewish girl. What he saw was a human being in trouble. He told me,
Paula, You must live. Do whatever you can. The war is coming to an end any day now. Whatever it takes. Try to live. And maybe, just maybe you'll be lucky enough to find somebody from your family.
All of us, we stick together. When I get something outside, let me say I get a piece of bread, I put it right here. But I'm hungry. But we said, when you got the bread, bring the bread to camp, and we split it 4-way.
Oh, the war is coming to an end. We hear the shootings, but we have to peel those potatoes. At this time, it is 3 days that we are going to be liberated. But are we going to live? Are we going to survive to see that?
Every night, they took 5, 10 lanes from the rear. They took 40, 50, 60. A machine gun killed them, left us on the road. But we came to a forest. So I said to my friends, everybody will take his place on the side. So I watched the SS, and I saw there's maybe about 200-300 feet space between this German and this German. So I said, let's go. I got a bullet right here. Small, tiny bullet came right here, scratched me. It's still marked there, but we run.
April the 23rd. Even our tormentors had to take a rest. They told us to rest, stop. I happened to get in a ditch with a friend of mine, and in the morning we heard fighting broke out, shooting, close to where we were laying. I remember they shoot every survivor who was still alive. They didn't see us because we're in a ditch by the road.
So there was already nice outside. We slept outside, me and my sister. And they came in and said,
We're gonna be liberated.
And all of a sudden, a few young soldiers, I didn't know who they are, they picked me up, and I could see they had almost tears in their eyes. They were very good boys, those treasured, beautiful Americans.
when they came in on motorcycles and looked at us, many men, they cried. We didn't have any tears to cry.
Hear the jeeps ring back and forth. There, this wonderful moment of liberation, and beautiful young soldiers are storming into the kitchen and calling out with joy.
You are free! You are liberated!
We're tired, but we didn't eat for 2 days. But the courage to survive, for freedom, we survive. We were a lot of places. We were on the farms, we asked for food, and the German lady said,
Go take a cow on the pasture, and you can have the milk.
so my friend, we milked the cow, and when he put his mouth to the bucket, he died because his body was not used to fat.
So they started to give us food. It was just, we could hardly eat. It was just too much after so many years of malnutrition, especially in the last few months. A lot of former inmates, survivors, died because that American food was just too much.
My mother by that time was already so sick and emaciated. She died 4 weeks later.
We know what they are saying, but we cannot get up on our own. We fall to the ground. We reach on all fours towards the boots of the soldiers. We hang on to them and we would not let them go. And we say, God, please, help us.
Don't leave us.
We are here. We are going to try to survive. They picked us up. They do whatever they can to help us. They medicated us, they fed us. But our stomachs were shrunk. So many died even after liberation.
You are free!
I'm weighing 65 pounds. I can see my ribs already.
At the age of 20 and a half, my weight is 73 pounds.
I was now 17 years old, and I weighed 80 pounds.
You are liberated.
How different it felt to sleep on a mattress again, to sleep on a sheet again, to sleep on a pillow, to eat with a fork and knife, to eat at a table, to do the things normal people do. It was a moment of joy I will always remember.
I found nobody.
I left my family's name, my sister's name, wherever I could, but unfortunately, no one.
My brother, after the war, went to Israel. I was on the way to America. But when I found my family, he too was seeking our family. They told him he has a sister. They told me I have a brother. We were reunited in Israel 32 years later.
The State of Israel was created in 1948, and instead of coming to America, which I wanted to badly, I thought that as a survivor, as a Jew, I have to go help build a place that should ever a tragedy like this repeat itself, which is possible, The Jews should have a place to escape, because the Germans told the Jews,
If you have a country that will let you in, you can go.
America wouldn't open its doors.
There was unfortunately no place to go. No country would let us in.
Many, many people gave up their faith because they said, how could God allow this?
Where was God? How could God listen to so many cries, babies, the experiments they made? I had a little brother, little sister. How? Why? What did we do? We didn't do nothing wrong.
How could God allow this?
The whole world. Where was the liberty, justice for all? How much your mother worth? How much my father worth? How much my sister? There's not enough money in the world.
I still light candles Friday night.
Because I was as young as I was, I somehow always trusted, I always believed that we will make it. I never completely lost my faith. I guess childish naivete, one could call it. But I never completely lost my faith.
I hoped that after that hellish time, at least I would see my sisters again. I wasn't lucky.
The only hope is I will see Shimek, my youngest brother.
Revenge, 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 revenge. Rakas, neme rakas, the son said to the father.
Neme rakas.
Take revenge.
There was only one word, which was hope. Hope to come out of this alive. This is what kept us alive. But of course, to most people, it didn't come true.
How could God allow this?
Anti-Semitism is still alive in Germany, France, and unfortunately too in America. There are plenty who would pick up where Hitler left off.
I really think that people didn't learn. But what we should learn, I think, people should be very well aware of what is going on in politics, who is being elected, so that a Hitler doesn't come in.
It can happen. It happened over there, it can happen here.
Don't tell me it didn't happen, or you didn't know, because all of a sudden, where did all the Jews go? What happened to all of them? Hitler wanted it that way. Why did you let him do that?
How long? Another 4 or 5 years. No one could even remember what happened.
To keep this memory alive, it is so important. Speak wherever you can to make a better world. It should never matter what religion, what nationality, what color skin a person is. We must treat each person with dignity and love, and protect the ones who cannot protect themselves.
The lesson we can learn is to live together in harmony, to realize we are all human beings, to realize we are in this world for only a short time. They stripped us of everything. But one thing they could never take away from us was knowledge. That's the most important thing.
Not to hate. Not to hate. Not to hate. Isn't it better to love somebody, to share if you have? Who needs so much? Do you need so much?
I only want to see, before I part from this world, that there should be peace and harmony among nations and among people.
I wanted 2 things. My head should work, my feet should carry me. Number 2, no fear. I'm not afraid. I live my life.
6 million.
Total of 41 people, and I'm the only survivor.
Destruction by fire.
No one survived. Just one uncle and cousin.
How could God allow this?
60-some people from my family perished.
To keep this memory alive.
2 little twin brothers and my parents were sent to Auschwitz.
To live together in harmony.
We lost the whole family.
No fear.
A little brother and a little sister. With my parents, they didn't survive.
Not to hate. Not to hate. not to hate.
Thank you.